I've made tons of videos analyzing the assassins by now. So now it's time to analyze the enemy, or the good guys, depending on your perspective, the Templars. Now there's a lot of Templars in Assassin's Creed, and rather than talking about all of them, we're going to keep things simple. We're only going to be talking about the Templars who had a big presence in their respective games, as a main antagonist, or in Rogue's case, a protagonist. I also won't be including modern day Templars because it's just going to get too complicated. Now obviously everybody has a different opinion when it comes to what it means to be deadly. In this video, what I'm mainly going to be focusing on is who causes the most trouble for the assassins, who kills the most assassins, and who you would fear the most if you're an assassin having to face down a Templar. It's still obviously going to be based on my own personal opinion, but that's what I'm going to keep in mind when analyzing who the deadliest is. And of course, feel free to leave down in the comments who you think the deadliest Templar is and why. Starting off, we're going to talk about the biggest Templar presence in Assassin's Creed 1, Robert de Sable. To me, it's quite obvious Robert isn't the deadliest Templar. Sure, he's clearly an effective leader, an important figure in the Templar Order, but I think it's safe to say he's not the best or deadliest fighter. He gets taken out pretty easily by Altair, and if anything, Robert was just a pawn, a means to an end, so definitely not the deadliest Templar. Rodrigo Borgia is definitely a different story. He's a very smart and deadly antagonist to go up against in AC2. He seeks the Izu artifacts that he can use to control the world essentially, and believes he's the prophet, the man meant to save the world. However, Rodrigo is pretty old. He's still obviously a decent fighter, but against a young assassin like Ezio, he doesn't really stand a chance. Where Rodrigo's deadliness comes in is in his influence and power. Not only does he lead the Templar Order, he also becomes the Pope, so he can literally influence the people's opinions and turn them against the assassins, as is evident at the start of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. He's also deadly with knowledge and the fact that he possesses a piece of Eden. In Brotherhood, Rodrigo's role is significantly diminished, which is kind of disappointing and underwhelming. I think part of it is because he's given up and puts more of his attention to being the Pope, and the other part, it seems, is he had a slight change of heart after Ezio spared his life. You can tell he's kind of over the whole assassin and Templar conflict, and entrusts the Templars mainly to his son Cesare. While Rodrigo is a master planner and manipulator and has insane power and influence, to me, compared to some of the other Templars, he's still not quite the deadliest, but certainly up there among them. Now, Rodrigo's son Cesare, the main antagonist of Brotherhood, is the complete opposite of his father. He's young and naive. All he really wants is power and control. His motives are selfish, unlike his father, who even though could be viewed as evil, in his eyes, he was trying to save the world from itself. Cesare, however, doesn't really care about that. Rather than save the world, he'd rather conquer it. He has no care for secrecy and planning like Rodrigo, and instead uses his large forces and armies to conquer. He's definitely a better fighter than Rodrigo, at least at Rodrigo's old age. However, he doesn't have the brains. Cesare's kind of stupid sometimes, and I don't think Ezio feared him at all. Ezio just wanted to save the world from his madness. So Cesare to me definitely isn't the deadliest Templar. Prince Ahmet to me is one of the weaker antagonists of this series. Even when compared to everybody we just talked about, to me he doesn't really stack up. He wanted to get into Altair's library in Masyaf Castle because he believed there was a great power that would allow him to further the Templar cause. Nothing suggests he was a great warrior or fighter. He was a leader and he had control over the Ottoman Empire, so his influence is what makes him more deadly than anything. But even when we compare him to someone similar like Rodrigo, he's just a lot weaker. So sorry Ahmet, you're not the deadliest. Charles Lee is quite an interesting one because while it does appear he's the main antagonist of Assassin's Creed 3, he doesn't really feel like it. If anything, Haytham feels more like a proper deadly antagonist. Charles Lee studied and worked under Haytham for years, and after his death took over the Templar Order, where all he essentially did was run away from Connor. I can't blame the man. Connor is terrifying, but it's clear he knew he didn't stand a chance against Connor, especially if not even Haytham could kill him. Which tells me Charles Lee isn't the deadliest fighter, at least when compared to a beast like Connor. Lee is honestly just a nuisance more than anything. You don't fear him, you just want to be rid of him and dismantle the Templars, since he's the only one left standing in Connor's way by the end. Charles Lee certainly isn't the deadliest Templar in my opinion. Haytham Kenway, however, the other main antagonist slash anti-hero, I suppose, of Assassin's Creed 3, is a different story. Not only is he a deadly and fierce warrior, as is evident at the start of Assassin's Creed 3 and onward, he's also extremely intelligent intelligent and clearly thinks things through. He always has some sort of agenda, whether it's working with Connor or establishing a Templar presence in colonial America. Not to mention his father was Edward Kenway, a deadly assassin in his own right, and Haytham had been training ever since he was a child and is really the only character who fully understands the views and practices of both the Templars and assassins. Well, okay, actually that's sort of a lie, there's Shay as well. But to me, Haytham is the Anakin Skywalker of this series, if you would, as he takes influence from both assassins and Templars. Haytham also clearly becomes more brutal and ruthless over his time in America. For example, when he's interrogating and then executing prisoners while working with Connor, he's a Templar any assassin would fear, and certainly more deadly than Charles Lee. Really, my only complaint is how he seemed to forget Connor had a hidden blade, and essentially let Connor kill him when he had him dead to rights, which I was thinking it's possible Haytham either had a moment of hesitation or decided in that moment to let Connor kill him, because he certainly knew he had a hidden blade on his wrist since he has them as well. So I think it's possible he let Connor kill him as he didn't want to kill his son, but was also unwilling to become an assassin. I don't know, let me know what you guys think about that. But anyway, regardless, Haytham is a very deadly and intimidating Templar, and certainly a contender for Deadliest in the series. Shay will likely be most people's pick for Deadliest Templar, and it makes sense. I mean, he's the only Templar protagonist of the series, and the only one where we really get to see them hunt down assassins. I'd argue Shay even has an argument for Deadliest for the protagonist of this series. He's an incredibly strong fighter, he knows the assassins, he understands what they do and what they want. They were the ones who trained him. So therefore, I think Shay in Assassin's Creed Rogue has to deal with the most difficult enemies. Like whenever you have to kill assassins who are trying to sneak up and assassinate you, Shay hunts down those he once called brother and cared for, and teams up with Haytham to effectively destroy the assassins in colonial America. Even at a pretty old age, he makes his way to Paris and assassinates Arno's father, a skilled assassin himself, and presumably attempts to rebuild the Templar Order, and it's so disappointing we don't get to see how that story unfolds. Regardless though, it's quite obvious Shay is among the deadliest of the series for the Templars. I also think it's worth pointing out he's the only Templar in this entire discussion who survives when we see him last, and that's no coincidence. Germain from Unity is kind of a forgettable Templar antagonist in the grand scheme of the series. I mean, sure, he's deadly, he was able to plot the assassination of the Templar Grand Master and recruit others to his cause, and eventually take over himself as Grand Master, where he then obtained the Sword of Eden. However, compared to a lot of others we've already talked about, that's nothing. Germain isn't really much of a fighter, he was a silversmith, and the only reason he was strong by the end was because he had the Sword of Eden. Sure, he's obviously a smart guy, but deadly? I don't know. I don't think of Germain when talking about the deadliest Templars. Crawford Starrick is very similar, a pretty forgetting and underwhelming antagonist of the series, who just so happens to get his hands on a powerful piece of Eden, this time being the Shroud of Eden, that prevented him from taking damage. I think at the very least, Starrick had more presence in the story of Syndicate than Germain did, and a lot more build up and screen time, which made him a little more intimidating and gave us more insight into the character. But again, compared to a Shay or Haytham or even a Rodrigo, I think he still falls short. So, who is the deadliest Templar? For me, it ultimately comes down to Shay Cormac from Assassin's Creed Rogue and Haytham Kenway from Assassin's Creed 3. And the winner is... Shay Cormac. I think most people would generally agree with this, but if you think it's Haytham Kenway, I could see that as well. And it's pretty cool that the two deadliest Templars worked together and destroyed the assassins, but for me, Shay is one intimidating guy to go up against. He kills so many assassins, many of which are high ranking and people who once taught him. He's a brutal and ruthless fighter, and also very intelligent, making him extremely deadly. I mean, you can literally just listen to him speak in the Rogue trailer. I mean, this man sounds deadly.
Life's hardest choices are the ones that force you to question your own moral code. My choice has led me here, standing against those I once called brothers.
Again, feel free to leave down in the comments who you think the deadliest Templar is and why. I'm really curious what you guys think. And if you're new here and enjoyed the video, I've made a ton of videos like this for the assassins of the series, including who the deadliest assassin is. So feel free to check that out if you'd like, and consider subscribing for more Assassin's Creed related videos like this in the future. Other than that, thanks for watching everyone, and have a great rest of your day, assassins. Or should I say Templars? This is a conundrum. Just have a good day, okay? Bye.